It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Welman, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome to the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius. And before we go any further, remember we started a WhatsApp channel so you can get updates as quickly as possible. The link's in the description down below. Secondly, remember to subscribe to this channel. We need your support. And thirdly, please remember you can become a member of this channel, 20 Rand a month, and you make sure that this channel stays on air. If you want to do a super thanks or super chat down below, make a donation. Don't let me stand in your way. Welcome, André. We're going to be talking about the Stormers versus the Bulls a bit, and then a bit about Antoine Dupont.
It feels like he's in the news for so many reasons, and most of them are really good.
Yeah, there's a big debate about whether he's the greatest of all time. We're not going into that. We wanted to talk about specifically this so-called new Dupont law, where he runs behind his forwards. And you went and had a look, and you don't think there's much to it now, don't you?
I think it's early days, but for something to be a loophole, I feel it needs to be within the rules, and you found a way to outsmart the rule book. Now, with this current issue, or that's been brought up, and like I said, it's early days, but obstruction is obstruction. So if you're running behind a player close enough that the defending player cannot get to you, or he is preventing, or he's blocked from making the tackle, that's going to be a penalty. And I think with what we saw in Antoine Dupont is him running in behind players. I think what happens is he is the 10, the French number 10 for me. He makes the decisions. He gets to the ruck. He looks at the options. He decides he's going to play the forwards, or he's going to play the 10. I'm certain if Intermac really or calls at a certain stage, he'll receive the pass. But I think Dupont makes most of the decisions. And what comes with that is that when he picks up the ball and he's seen a certain picture, by the time he's got the ball, he's picked up, he's run 1 or 2 meters, that picture might have changed. And that's what it looked like to me in the game against Wales, especially that cross kick, which was absolutely sublime. He put that on a marker, and a great try. But I don't think there was any intent on going in behind this wall, creating space, because that's what happened, and then making the kick and making this something that it's going to be in the French DNA, or something that you see in the French. I think if Wales had gone up, taken the space like they were supposed to, they run into one of those defenders or attackers, it's blocking, it's obstruction, and it's a penalty. And the next team you play, when they see this, they'll be a lot smarter, get off the line, run into one of those, hands in the air, and they get a penalty. So I don't think it's something, but with the French and Dupont himself, you never know. I just don't see it. There's another opportunity where it also happened. It just looks like they're not an option. He's run too far. They've overrun. They actually stop. They don't know what's going to happen now, as you don't know with Dupont. So I think it's a case of him playing off the cuff and playing what he sees and making decisions on the run.
What was interesting about that little clip that you're referring to, that's where he gave that kick and the try was scored, is Intermac was just sort of standing off there. He was not involved at all, and it was never going to be him, like you just said. Dupont might not be wearing the number 10 jersey, but effectively he acts as the number 10 because he was running. And the interesting thing that we spoke to you, Griffin, about last week, he's got these impressive running stats, and that's because he runs all the time. Either he can sometimes run backwards, but he keeps running. And that's when he's sizing up things, and that makes a difference. What is the benefit of having a 9 making the calls that a 10 would normally make?
The first thing that comes to mind is you need one less voice. You need one less call. So if you've got someone of Dupont's ability to see space, to see opportunities, to see threats the way that he does, you leave it to him to make the decision. What that in turn requires from your team is that everybody's got to stay alive, because this ball might be coming to the blind. This ball might be going bridge ball, cross kick, back to 10. In the pod, you don't know who he's going to hit. Is he going to hit the first, second, or third guy? Is he going to go himself? So I think the advantage of that is you need one less call. You play a lot quicker. but it does require your team to have a live be live options all the time. And I think what really impresses me about him is the fact that he's not just there when it's the showmanship and it's going well. How many times forwards get themselves out of shape, run the ball up, no cleaners, and he's the first guy that goes over the ball. So he's doing a lot of extra work from that position, and just it's a privilege to be able to be watching rugby and to see this generation of rugby players and Dupont.
If you were the opposing team and you know what you know about Dupont now, like you just mentioned, just as a matter of interest, how would you counter him?
You got to make it ugly. You got to make it ugly. And even though it gets ugly at ruck times, he's so efficient in the way that he gets the ball out of there. But I think you need to really make the rucks ugly. You need to get one or two players just even from the blind side. Once he's on the pass, just push him, get him on the ground, make him stand up, be late to the next one. You need to get him, you need to frustrate him. But at the moment, he's just running amok. He's doing exactly what he wants to do, and there was no pressure on him. And when you get Dupont in that mood, he's a difficult character to stop.
Now, with this new rules that you're not allowed to interfere with the nine, I know the scrum specifically, you're not allowed to move past the mouth of the scrum, but even in the rucks and mauls, you're not allowed to touch him or whatever interfere with him. Has that changed at all, and does that affect the way you would play him?
Look, it has sped up the game. I think it's made a big difference in guys in for referees managing rucks and mauls. But the tackle situation, the ruck situation, that's going to stay the same. That's that's going to be a physical battle, and he's still got to wait for the ball to get out there. So the longer that takes, the more you've got an opportunity to set that defense, and the better equipped you are for the next phase. The problem is when that ball's quick, you're not set. He'll take advantage of any defenders not setting, and he's got the ability to either go himself or put people into space and get in behind the defense.
That's interesting that you talk about that ability. I'm fascinated by that. How does a rugby player have that ability? Is it just something that comes naturally? Is it something that you learn? I mean, there's been so many number nines in the history of the game, but not all of them, or very few of them, if any, is at the level that he is, that ability to see space. And we're going to talk about Willie le Roux just a bit, and just a bit similar ability to see space. How does it work? How do they get that vision almost?
From what I've learned in the past with those types of players in particular is that they've had the opportunity to play under coaches which recognized the potential within them, never put them in boxes, and have given them the freedom to make mistakes. You're going to make a mistake going to the blind, no problem. The next one will probably be the right decision. So I think that's the first thing. They've been part of groups growing up, age group rugby, where they could experiment without the fear of losing the game. Some of them are in good schools, so they win more games than they lose, which also increases the amount of opportunities and chances that you can take. That's that to me is makes a big difference. I think the other thing you need to look at when you're working with players like that is that they've got a really good skill set. When you talk to Wayne Smith, and we have mentioned it, that people asked him, how does the All Blacks always have the flair that they show? And he says it's not flair. It's just a case of them having the basics so well, so under control that they actually create time to become creative. So without thinking of how to catch, how to pass, they use that time to look at options, to see pictures. And without knowing his background in any other sports, I think he's probably an amazing footballer. He probably can do a lot of tricks with a football. He can hit a tennis ball. I just get the idea that he's got a really versatile skill set. And because his skill set is so high, he can think ahead and he can see things before he has to do the primary job that he has to do now, and that buys him time. It always looks like he's got so much time, and that's the reason why.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's got so much time. I wanted to ask you a totally different question now. I just had an interview with Ben Herring that used to coach at Toyota Verblitz under Steve Hansen. He also used to be at the Red Dolphins that you're coaching at the moment. And it was interesting to me. He's talking about coaching culture, and I'm putting the link to that video up here. I wanted to get your input on that, the coaching culture side, the side where you focus on human beings, what's good, what's working, what doesn't work, what's wrong with a player, what's wrong at home, something like that. Just give me your view of that side of coaching specifically.
Culture is a word that's been thrown around, and I think it's good intent. I think that it's been thrown around more than it used to in the past, because of the generation we're coaching. We acknowledge the fact that we need to change our approach. But I don't think you coach culture. I think you are going to have a culture, regardless if you're coaching it or not. If someone walks into your team environment, they're going to walk in, they're going to feel something. That's your culture. They're going to see how you interact in meetings, how you handle difficult situations on the training field, halftime. If someone had to stand and watch those situations, they'll see your culture. Now, that is a result of the environment that you're creating. Are you creating an environment of care? Are you creating an environment of safety, inclusion, etc., etc.? Are you creating an environment of fear? Are guys speaking up in meetings? Are they speaking up when they made a mistake? Are they having their say when you're asking, do you think this is going to work? That type of thing. The environment you put forth will equal the type of culture that you've got. And obviously the personnel that you've got, you need to get people in that want to work on that environment so that the culture can be positive. But I think the environment that you put out there has to create and cultivate this culture, and that's what people feel when they get into your team situation and team atmosphere, and then they can say, I feel warmth, I feel care, I feel there's an understanding of what's needed from a personal level, instead of just rugby and having players tick the boxes on the field.
That brings me neatly to the Stormers versus the Bulls. Now, I'm saying this because there's a lot of debate about the culture, for example, at the Stormers, and obviously at the Bulls as well. But the Stormers specifically, John Dobson is known as a people's person. He knows his players. He's very friendly with them. He's very empathetic and everything. The question now arises that is he a little bit technically challenged in the sense that he might not be able to get the Stormers to the next level on his own, and that means bringing in extra coaching personnel, people who do have that skills that can complement him. And if you look at the Stormers at the moment, do you think that's a valid point?
I reckon it's a bit unfair. We wouldn't have, nobody asked this question, and I know it's been asked a couple of times, but nobody asked it when they won the URC. It's kind of like people need to understand the dynamics of coaching, and probably don't need to understand it, but I think it helps if you understand that, there are so many variables that you deal with. That environment we just spoke about. You're trying to set an environment to promote a great culture. You're trying to upskill your coaches and give them autonomy and having them be part of the process instead of just putting the process in front of them. You're trying to deal with board members. You're trying to deal with press. You're trying to deal with a game plan that didn't work on the weekend. There's so many variables that go in there, and coaching the technical stuff is obviously you need to be competent. You need to be able to do these things right in order to win matches. But having your team believe they can win this game is a big part of your job is done if you can do that. Then the technical stuff will come in, and then you can work on the technical stuff. But if you've got a team that doesn't believe they can win, you can probably put any coach in there. He's probably not going to win that game. So I think it's an unfair question in terms of what he has achieved. I think the way that they're trying to play, and maybe I'm a bit biased because I want to see them, I want to see them keep this plan that they've got being very ambitious, making good decisions in turn, not to the detriment of results and their own system. But the way that they play, he's just given them a lot of freedom within the system. And a lot of people have gone off and said the offloads are killing us. Yeah, but it's also working. It's put a lot of teams under pressure. It's made them difficult to defend. So, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Now we need to see how we can sharpen the sword on the one side more than the other side. So no, I don't think he's technically challenged. I think he's showed it in the past that I'm not sure exactly what he coaches, and like I said, I might be biased because I want to see them play the way they do. But he's got some really good coaches with him, and we all know how important the assistant coaches are.
That's interesting because you've been, singing the praise of the way the Stormers play. You like what you see there. It must just sort of click. And the reason I'm asking you this, do the Stormers play differently today than they did when they won the title? Because other teams might have worked them out now. And the question is, can you adapt, move your game on so that what they think they know about you now doesn't work anymore? You've now moved on and figured out something else, like Rassie does famously. The way the Stormers are playing now, all the offloads, the exciting stuff, Warwick Geland either, being brilliant or woeful. What do the Stormers need to make that work?
I think that they need to be really consistent in their variation in terms of if it's on the day, move your playing zone back out just outside your 22 and really have a go. If it's not working on the day, you come up against a team that's got their defense lines are set early. They're turning on the ball in contact situations. You're not getting the offloads away. Let's kick it into their area, work on that chase line. Norman Lake has done a really good job in the def. They've shown how good they can defend. And I think if you look back at that URC season, that their defense was critical to their success. The attack has always been a strength of theirs. The inconsistency sometimes is what gets them. But also, they've had a lot of injuries in critical areas, and some of their best players aren't on the field. So I think they need to have variation when it's needed. And then again, if it's going well, you need to keep striking that iron when it's hot. Keep playing. Open up that space a bit bigger so that you can take more chances. And when it's not going well, if you're not on the day, if you feel like there's a defensive side up against you that's just not committing numbers to the ruck, they've always got 15 on feet, etc. Get your kicking game in place, put it back, trust your kick chase lines, and let's force some 22 entries, ball into the 22, get attacking lineouts within their half.
Okay, talking about defense, you gave me some very interesting stats, and that is that the Bulls have conceded the fewest tries and the Stormers have conceded more tries than they've scored. So talk about the Stormers firstly. Where did the Stormers concede the most tries from? Because that's an interesting thing that the Bulls might want to focus on in terms of attack.
As in most of the stats, most of the teams concede more tries off lineouts. But that means that they'll play one phase, have a gadget play, score against them, or more tries seen as a lineout try, obviously. But you can also play five phases from the lineout, and that'll be the source of the try. So I think what's important to notice is the fact that the Stormers have conceded from turnovers as well. And they've conceded about, I think it was 31% from turnovers, which makes them susceptible to the Bulls focusing on breakdown steals and getting ball back on turnovers. And the Bulls will definitely see that as an opportunity to pounce on.
Now, this is a good time to now talk about the injuries that the Bulls have suffered, because Elrich Lowe is injured. Who's going to be the loose trio that can make a difference? Can continue the work that the Bulls have been doing? Because on the Stormers side, they've got Dion for back and proper people that can jackal and turn the ball over. It might be that Bulls might be lacking a bit of the personnel that they've had up till now, and the Stormers might be lucky enough to have more of those type of players, and that might change that statistic a little bit.
I think both teams, with regards to personnel and certain roles that they fulfill, both teams have got let's put it this way. You get certain teams that allocate jackal roles. Let's say the 2, the 6, 8, 12, and maybe the 13, argument's sake. Whereas within the Bulls and the Stormers, it feels like they've given 1 to 15 license. Let's work on your jackal technique. Let's work on your decision making at tackle situations and ruck time, because I want everybody to have the ability, when you're in that position, to be able to either slow the ball down, make that ruck as ugly as possible, or to turn it over and steal it fast or get a penalty. And you'll regularly see a Neetling Forshire attempting a jackal, Gerard Steenekamp attempting a jackal. So I think with regards to that, that's more of a defense DNA. Both teams, when they get an opportunity, it doesn't matter what the number on the back is, they'll go in for that jackal. Will you miss certain individuals fulfilling those roles? Without a doubt. If Dion Fourie is not on the pitch for the Stormers, he's better than the rest at jackling, at turning ball over, making decisions, being really tough, surviving cleans. So yes, that can make a difference, the type of personnel, but will it have an effect on the way that they want to go about their business? I don't think so. I think that's part of their DNA. Their defense DNA is to promote players to get breakdown steals and have jackal attempts.
Yeah, because it's interesting. The Bulls actually scored 41% of the tries from turnovers, which is interesting, and 45% from a lineout. So that's 86% of their games, either lineouts. And you said now lineouts might be several phases down the line. But the point is, those are two very strong points of the Bulls. And I'm worried about the fact, for example, that Ron Orkier is not playing, because just when the Bulls lineup started firing, they have a serious injury to a very important player. But at the same time, the Stormers have the same problem. JD Schikkeling being injured, that lineup's been functioning properly, except for the throw-ins. That was a disaster from Dweba and Higu. But the point is, the lineups might be a bit more of an equal battle this weekend than we expect. Maybe a bit more of a gesukkel, a bit more of a getrommel.
Yeah, and it feels like when you get to these derbies, teams maul a bit more. Especially in the beginning, you get an opportunity, you want to keep it nice and tight. Hopefully we see the mauls in the beginning, and then we start seeing some nice gadget plays out of that, drawing the team into the defense and then playing off the edges from that. And it's definitely going to be it's a big source of tries. So both teams have got to find ways to get the ball first, but also then, getting the ball at 2, the defenses are at that level is just so efficient and so good. If you're going to take the ball at 2, you can play with that, but you're going to put your 9 under pressure. You're going to have no vacuum attack whatsoever. Second phase is going to be a struggle as well, and predominantly you'll play 3 phases, not gain anything, and probably box kick from there or kick it back at them. So I think it's going to be important for both teams. How they're going to do it, I'm not sure. There's a lot of great coaches working with them, but I'm sure they'll go into the game with a plan.
Talking about coaches, I want to talk to you about John Teed a little bit, the defense coach, good friend of yours at the Bulls. You talked about, you noticed how well coached the Bulls defense is. And I want to make this point because, Jake takes a lot of flack, against a lot of flack. The Bulls are not good enough at this, good enough at that. They scored 29 tries this season so far in the USC, and they only conceded 16, the least in the competition. I mentioned it before. But what's very important, they've also conceded the least turnovers from a tackle from any team, 75. That's the best statistic in the competition. The Stormers are not far behind. They scored 87. They've allowed 87. But the point is the Bulls are that much better. Talk to me about the Bulls defense specifically in the system under Jean Teet. What do you see there? What kind of a system are they using? And also you mentioned, for example, the Bulls know exactly when to fold, where to go to. that is a sign of a well-drilled, well-coached team.
So that stat of 75 is when you go into the tackle, do you allow the offload, or does that tackle situation become a ruck or a tackle situation? That's one of the ways to see if a team is well coached, in my opinion, because guys going past the ball, switching off, not turning on the ball, closing up offloads. So you kind of want to close up that tackle situation, get it onto the ground, get into ruck position so you can set your defense. Once you don't get that, the offload gets thrown, you never get set and you keep chasing. We regularly say that on this channel, but that's a fact, and that's what a lot of teams are looking for. And to be the team, and it's by quite a margin, I think the closest team is at 85, to be the team that allows the least amount of offloads in this type of competition, it doesn't just happen. Just like offloading is part of your DNA with the Stormers, that's the way they want to play. Preventing offload also needs to be part of your DNA. If you look at the Bulls-Lions game, the Bulls were always set. Their fold was always set before the Lions came around the corner. That's a well-coached team. You do get the games designed to score tries, but you do get situations where guys get involved with rucks. The fold is slow. You get beaten on the outside. Turnovers happen. Balls quickly available. You're not set. That's not a symptom of a badly coached team. It's what happens after that. How quickly can you get back from danger to dominance? Can you set yourself up again to defend the next phases? And if you look at that, everything's in place. The system of lineouts, the system of scrums, and the stats talk for themselves. It's like you concede the least amount of tries in this type of competition, but also a stat like the offload allowed, you're winning that stat as well. It says something about that coach.
On the other side, Norman Laker, the defense coach of Storm, is highly rated. Also was talk of him maybe joining England as defense coach. He's that highly rated. And he talked about the fact that they might have to devise a plan for defending against Willie le Roux, who's now suddenly emerged as a possible number 10 for the Bulls. So if you're now talking about Willie le Roux, what do you see Willie's role in this specific match? Does he start at 10? Does he start at 15? Does he come off the bench? Does he play the full 80 minutes? Knowing Willie, knowing what he's capable of, and knowing how he can turn a game around, what would your strategy be using Willie?
Well, just firstly, to talk on Norman, I think he's a superb defense coach. So passionate, brings energy to everything that he does, and it shows. I think the team just got out of the gates a bit late, and the stats are a bit disjointed because of the first couple of games. The personnel was different, and then they go and play a game where they don't concede a single point in that type of competition. And that also doesn't just happen. And Sale had a lot of opportunities to score on the day, but they couldn't. And that's, that also shows the quality of the defense. But it comes from putting that practice into play, and it's transferring onto the pitch. And look, I always say the game's designed to score tries, and some teams just have your number on the day, and you've got to accept that. But once it gets to the nitty-gritty and the system stuff, I think these are two great defense coaches. With your question with regards to Willie, he can definitely do it. He can definitely slot in there. But I think if I had to defend against Willie, I think I'd want to close up options off him. I want to take his wide options away. I want him to feel under pressure the whole day. Willie plays 15 when he touches the ball for the Springboks, and when he's on 15 for the Bulls. Whenever he touches the ball, it feels like something great's about to happen. The expectation's there. Now Willie also feels that. So when he has the ball, he sometimes throws a bridge ball, which probably shouldn't go there. But he forces the situation because it kind of feels like they have to score now. He's got the ball now. And I think that would excite the Stormers because he's going to think in that way. That's the way that he's been playing. Whereas when you're playing at 10, you're using your players to throw punches. You'll go forwards here, forwards there, pull the trigger, get out to the backs, use your forwards. You keep throwing punches, and then you wait for that one moment, and then you throw that money ball or you kick that money ball. Whereas I think with Willie, it happens more often, and more often than not, it's not on yet. It's coming, but it's not on yet. So I think with Willie, I'd like to take his outside, put a high line on the outside, take his visual, take his outside option away, give him a visual of there's always people in your line, and make him feel like he needs to make a decision on the spot, and put them under pressure in that way.
So that's on the attack. But if the Bulls go on the defense, would you keep Willie at 10? Or would you interchange him with the fullback, whoever that might be, like the Springboks do?
Well, I went and had a look against the Bulls again, and Willie was defending in the front line, and he was doing it well. He was making double hits. He wasn't giving away gain line. Does Willie want to do that for 80 minutes? I'm not sure. And again, if I was the Stormers and Willie's defending at 10, I'd want him to make as many tackles as possible on the day. It's not something that he's used to, so I would definitely have a focus on doing that. But getting back to where Willie should probably function from the back, he's got a great view. He makes good decisions from the back. That rarely makes a bad decision on when to counter and when to kick. He knows when he's got support, knows when he doesn't. So it'll be interesting to see where they go if Willie starts. Does he defend in front line like he did against the Lions, or do they keep him back? Personally, I would probably start Willie at 15 and move him to 10 in the second half.
Well, as and when as well, interchange in during the first half as well. If let's say Boeta starts, Boeta can also play 15 and maybe move Willie in and Boeta back. But you also want to give Boeta a bit more of an opportunity. You need this guy to grow into his role. Jan Goosen, I think, is out for 12 weeks or something, the Bulls said yesterday. So you need to have a proper fullback playoffs. So Boeta needs time to develop as well. But this is a big game. This is not really time for experimentation, isn't it?
Well, Jake has shown that big games hasn't stopped him from giving guys opportunities to wear the captain's armband. And it's exactly what you just said, Mbia. You're going into this game. Willie had a great run against the Lions in the second half, and in swaalkie maak nie 'n somer nie. You still need to play as you do, and you're wanting to develop this guy. So just chucking Willie in there for the sake of it, you're going to cause unnecessary disruptions, I think, whereas you can get the same effect, plus get the added benefit of Boeta running 10 again, learning, growing, and then if it goes well, you keep him there. Willie can slot in and out 15 as he does. He still calls the shots from the back. Or when you need Willie to get closer to the game, you move him to 10 and he plays from there. So again, I don't think I'd start him at 10, and it's a great point that you make there. It gives Boeta a good message that the coaching staff's backing him and he gets an opportunity to grow.
Interesting statistic that you mentioned to me is the Stormers against the Lions went wide 14% of the time, if I'm correct, and then against Leinster, they only managed to do that 6% of the time. Now, obviously, with Leinster, you're up against the Jacques Nienaber famous blitz defense. How do you foresee the Stormers getting around the Bulls in this instance? Because clearly the Bulls might be a bit more vulnerable on the edges. The Stormers are actually quite good at attacking from wide. They've got all this offloads going, and the mercurial players like the Warrigaland. How would you get the Stormers to better that statistic?
I think just in the statistic itself, it just shows that what type of game the Stormers need to play to be successful and to play their brand of rugby. And thinking back to that Lions game, the way they outworked, outthought, outplayed the Lions on the day by moving the ball to that wide spaces, and the way they did it when the call came, and then getting the offloads in those channels, making the Lions chase back, putting them under pressure, getting advantage, etc., etc. I think against the Bulls, I haven't gotten the feeling that they're running this high line speed, outside up type defense. It's a very connected. They want to get. I know John wants to get line speed, but he's really big on connection. And once you once you have a big focus on connection, it does take away from the speed a bit, because you need to wait. Even though you don't want to wait, but you can't just go. Where line speed teams normally go, we need to get to the guy who's in front. Connection goes, we need to be together. If it's you
Mm.
stopping a bit or you going faster, connection is more important. And I think what that'll do is it'll probably paint the same picture as against the Lions for the Stormers. Don't run into these heavy walls. Ensure that you go in there, get your ball out, get into the wide edges, play your offloading game, put the Bulls under pressure, take them out of their defense structure as much as possible, and then and also I think get yourself playing a bit earlier, because they need to have run to kick options. If they're just going to kick the ball, I think the Bulls will be able to cover it. When the Lions played the Bulls at certain parts of the field, they had 14 in the front line, they had one at the back. And I think for teams to be successful, they need to take those opportunities and put the ball behind them. But you play to earn that right. So you have run to kick. Whenever it opens up, you can take that space. Or when it opens up with your running and you're making meters, then you can keep going there.
One more thing that the Bulls have been pretty bad at this season, and we talked about this, but they've gotten much better at it, is converting entries into 22 into points. It was 18 entries, I think, and three times. They only scored three times against, I can't remember the match specifically, but against the Lions, they turned it around. They went for tap and goes, sped things up. They didn't slow things down that they've been doing for a while now. Do you think the Stormers can find a way to make sure the Bulls don't speed it up? And if you were the Bulls, how can you make sure that you convert those 22 entries into points? Because that is Bulls are very good at getting there. They're not necessarily very good at converting that.
First thing that comes to mind when you talk about 22 entries, it's winning that 10 meter to 10 meter battle. Because a lot of the time, regularly it's aerial battles, and the Bulls are really good at that. So when the Bulls are playing from their 22, just outside their 22, they're kicking a high ball into that 10 meter to 10 meter area, halfway line. They get that ball back. Now you're under pressure. They play from there. You have to probably insert someone. You leave more kick space at the back, and they can put kicks in there. Or you concede the penalty because of pressure. Now they get into the 22. So I think the first thing is the the aerial battles in that area. The Stormers have got to ensure that they catch the ball, don't concede any unnecessary penalties in that area. And the second thing is that'll limit the 22 entries. It's one thing to say how do we convert 22 entries, but if teams don't have 22 entries, then they've got nothing to convert. So I think for the Stormers, there needs to be some form of focus on preventing 22 entries. So discipline, get onto the ref's good side from the start, and that includes with your scrums. And then that battle between the two tens, if you have to, don't concede unnecessary penalties there, and just give guys, and they've got long kickers, they can even take 3 points if they want, but they need to prevent the 22 entries, in my opinion.
Talking about penalties, we saw the very unusual sight of Frans Malherbe getting a yellow card for illegal scrumming against the very same style that you talked about that the Stormers didn't concede a single point against. What on earth, number one, happened there? And secondly, the Bulls have got a formidable scrum. I mean, you've got that front row, Gerard Steenkamp, probably either Johan Groblaar or Akker van der Merwe, and then Volkulo at tight head. I mean, you would have thought the Stormers would stand up to the Bulls any given day, but when a guy like Frans Malherbe starts conceding penalties and getting a yellow card, like I mentioned, some question marks start arising. But there's a story behind what happened to France. Tell me about that. And then, do you think the scrums will be such an important part of this, or very important part of the game, or maybe not so much?
Without a doubt, I think there'll be big. Like I said to you, the Lions managed the scrums very well against the Bulls. They got the Bulls to play off scrums and not play with advantage. Because the fact is that if you're defending, knowing you have to defend them, and if they don't get advantage, you're going back they're going to kick a touch, and you're probably going to have to defend them all and then defend another 10 phases within your own 22. And it takes its toll. So, like I said, the Lions managed the scrums well, got the Bulls to play off scrums and not with advantage. That's going to be the first thing. I think with France, you mentioned that there was this viewpoint that France tends to go inwards, and all the Lucet then needs to do is just stay straight. Now I'm talking out of other people's mouths here, but the point is, once you show one picture too many times to the ref, he starts believing that every time there's just a hint of it, it's the same picture. And they do go in with preconceived notions. And once you see, and they look for easy cues, and they want to make good decisions. So if they think they see something on that, he's probably going to blow it. But the bad news for the Bulls is France will be better after that game, because it's the one thing that I know he'll take very personal. I think that, and probably if he burns the steak, or the steak is not cooked perfectly, I think he'll take that personally. But the scrums, he'll take personally, and he'll definitely be better.
So on the day, assume it's the Bulls pack versus the Stormers pack. We're not sure about the exact personnel, but which one of those two teams do you think would have the strongest scrum? Assuming that we're going to see the same kind of team that we saw before.
See, the other thing is that if you get locks that scrum well behind props, like I think Schickerling is a good scrummager. He's got good weight. I think he'll make a difference. So I think I would have to say that I think the Bulls scrum is just too dominant. But maybe the Stormers saw enough in the Lions performance. You don't have to dominate scrums. You need to manage scrums with the rules these days. Refs want the play to continue. They want to look for a reason to play. Give them that reason. Stay up, stay in the fight. Keep your front five in the fight as long as possible. Even your back three, 6, 7, 8. Don't meerkat. Don't want to see eyes above to defend. Scrum first and get yourself into a position so that they can play without advantage. But I think the Bull scrum will be more dominant.
Yeah, you mentioned that JD Schickerling, because he's injured, he's not going to be playing. Ronald Keir is injured, he's not going to be playing. So I think the Bulls will probably go with someone like Kobus Wiese, is quite big and strong and the likes. I'm not sure. Murat and Ruben van Heerden maybe. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. All right, so on the day, who would you make the captain of the Bulls? Because it's a big game, it's away from home, it's at a very hostile stadium, it's going to probably be a sellout. Your Ruan is not injured, Elrich is injured, the guys have been regular captains this season. We saw the difference Marcel made against the Lions towards the end of the game when Elrich went off injured, Ruan went off injured very early. How important is the role of the captain? And as a Bulls coach, who would you have made the captain against for this very important game?
I think the easy answer would be Marcel. It just depends on what that process looked like in getting the new captains, or giving the new captains opportunities to lead the team. You know, if you've got your leadership group buying into this process where we exposing players to this positions, regardless of what type of game this is, I think then it's easy to go, Marcel, I need you now, because obviously you can see what's happening here. He's the easy answer for me. And it's also a case of, I don't think that'll influence the way he plays. He was phenomenal against the Lions, and he was always talking anyways. He's just closer to the ref now. So in my mind, it's Marcel without a doubt.
All right. A quick prediction. Who do you think is going to walk away with the spoils this weekend?
I think the Bulls will win it by 7.
That's a big one. That's a substantial margin. Angus said to me the Bulls last won in Cape Town in 2011. I mean, that's a long streak to break. I'm excited. I agree with you. I think the Bulls going to win it. I just don't think it's going to be that big a victory. The Bulls are going to eke it out, but I think they're going to take it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting if the Stormers get their offload game, and they can look after their ruck ball and get the Bulls to be chasing into the edges, I think that's where the difference is going to lie for them.
Well, Andre, thanks, man. That took a lot of time, but I really appreciate this kind of insight and something that you don't normally get. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Envia.
It's the Out the Box Rugby Podcast with André Pretorius and Envia Welman, only on Megafoon Rugby.